Hello and welcome to the Capitol Report on NTD Television. I'm Steve Lance. Former President Trump now vowing to appeal after a federal judge today set the trial date for the Justice Department's 2020 election case. Joining us now is NTD's Iris Tao from outside the D.C. courthouse. So Iris, what makes this date significant and why is Trump appealing?
Good evening. So the judge in charge of this case, Judge Tanya Chutkan, has set the trial date for this case for March 4th, 2024. And that is just one day before Super Tuesday, which is when 15 states will hold their primaries. So it's really in the middle of the Republican primary season. And Trump this afternoon responded on Truth Social, calling it election interference. He said that, quote, "A biased Trump-hating judge gave me only a 2-month extension, just what our corrupt government wanted. Super Tuesday, I will appeal." So this morning, before the judge announced her decision, Trump's lawyers sparred with federal prosecutors over the issue of a trial date right behind me at this courthouse. Federal prosecutors had asked for a trial date in January 2024, citing the need for a speedy trial. But Trump's lawyers asked for a trial date in April 2026, saying that they would need years to go through the over 10 million pages of documents presented to them by the DOJ, which they said in their court filing that, if printed out, would amount to a tower 8 times the height of the Washington Monument. And today in court, Trump's lawyers said that, quote, "This man's liberty and life is at stake, and he deserves an adequate representation," adding that the DOJ's time frame of just 5 months from now will not allow Trump to have a fair trial. But prosecutors fired back, saying that a lot of the documents had already been available to them beforehand, adding that it's not like they have to go through them page by page anyway. But of course, now the judge has set the trial date for March 2024, which would give Trump's lawyers just 2 months, more than what the DOJ wanted them to have.
Seems like we'll be seeing more legal battles over that contentious trial date. There's also some important updates from Trump's case in Georgia. Can you also tell us a little bit more about that?
Absolutely. So the arraignment date has been set for Trump and his 18 co-defendants in the Georgia election case. Trump will be arraigned next Wednesday at 9:30 a.m. And just like in the other cases, Trump is expected to again plead not guilty. Steve.
Thanks for the updates, Iris. And staying in Georgia, Trump's former White House Chief of Staff, Mark Meadows, testifying today, arguing to move his case to federal court. Joining us now to unpack the legal background, we have Hans von Spakovsky, former member of the Federal Election Commission and now manager of Election Law Reform Initiative at the Heritage Foundation. Hans von Spakovsky, thank you so much for joining us.
Sure, glad to be here.
Hans, Mark Meadows making an attempt to have his case removed from state court in Georgia to be moved over to federal court. What are some of the biggest factors at play here?
Well, he's basing it on a federal statute that's been around for a very, very long time that allows a federal official who was acting either in his official or individual capacity in his job to remove to federal court any kind of state civil or criminal prosecution. It's a very low standard to meet, and the court ought to grant it to him. Like I said, the statute's been around for a very long time, and there are good reasons for it to avoid having state officials trying to interfere with what individuals working for the federal government are doing.
So you obviously have DA Fani Willis trying to make her case to prevent this from happening. Does this fundamentally boil down to what premise someone is operating on when viewing this? If you as president and subsequently federal officials under the president believe that the election was conducted in a dishonest way that may have been stolen through election fraud, is this a campaign issue or also official business of the President of the United States?
Oh, no, I think it's official business of the United States. Look, it's no different from the fact that if, for example, someone who's run for Congress, including an incumbent, if they believe that an election was stolen or improperly decided, that's something they bring to the attention of Congress. In fact, on the House side, the House Administration Committee, and it's the House Administration Committee that has the jurisdiction to investigate those kind of claims. The president, I think, actually has the same duty when it comes to a presidential election, and the possibility that the wrong presidential electors, the wrong votes of the presidential electors are being sent to Congress. So again, I think Mark Meadows has a very good argument. Keep in mind that the hearing that's being conducted is not on the substance or merit of those arguments, whether Mark Meadows is correct, whether he was acting within the scope of his duties, or Fani Willis is correct. Under the statute, the very fact that it's a federal official being prosecuted should be enough to remove it to federal court. Once it's there, then you would have proceedings to talk about the merits of the actual issue.
That's a very important point. Thank you for clarifying that. I mean, it sounds like, you know, as you mentioned, once you start to get into the issue, it's not as simple as did Mark Meadows violate the Hatch Act or not. There could be something in between.
Well, it could be, and whether or not he violated the Hatch Act, I actually don't think that's a solid claim. But the point is, that should not prevent removal to federal court. That's an argument that Fani Willis can raise once it's in federal court, because again, that would go to the substance of the issue. Mark Meadows is going to be arguing that he has executive branch immunity that's long been recognized. In fact, it's kind of interesting, you know, all this goes back to a U.S. Supreme Court case in 1890, in which local prosecutors in California tried to prosecute a U.S. Marshal for defending a U.S. Supreme Court justice. So this goes back a long way. The feds trying to protect themselves from local prosecutors.
Hans von Spakovsky, thank you so much for joining us.
Sure, thanks for having me.
Former President Trump is increasing his lead in the polls, this after the primary debate last week, which he did not attend. Meanwhile, Vivek Ramaswamy is gaining some steam. Here's what the polls say about the Republican primary.
Former President Trump now leads Florida Governor Ron DeSantis by a staggering 40 percentage points in the race for the Republican presidential nomination. That's according to a Reuters Ipsos poll, which closed on Friday after a primary debate Trump didn't attend and yet another indictment. The poll shows Trump now has 52% support from Republican voters. That's up from the 47% he received in a Reuters Ipsos poll in early August. DeSantis remains in second place with 13%. The Florida governor performed best during the first Republican primary debate last week. That's according to a different poll by Ipsos, conducted together with 538 and The Washington Post. That poll found that 29% of voters who watched the debate say DeSantis was the candidate who did best. Closely behind him is tech entrepreneur Vivek Ramaswamy. 26% of voters say he performed best during the debate. However, in terms of general support from Republican voters, Ramaswamy has been doing better than DeSantis lately. Here's an average from 538 taken from 18 different polls. As you can see, DeSantis' numbers have been going down steadily since the start of the campaign. Meanwhile, Ramaswamy's numbers have been going up for the past 2 weeks, to the point where he's now head-to-head with DeSantis. The next Republican primary debate is scheduled to take place in a month. Republican primary elections are set to kick off in mid-January.
Will the House of Representatives launch an impeachment inquiry into President Biden when they come back to session next month? House Speaker Kevin McCarthy has hinted at this, only to back off later. Over the weekend, he spoke about it again. NTD's Melina Wisecup has more on this from Capitol Hill.
Recent comments coming from House Speaker Kevin McCarthy, as well as the chairman of the Judiciary Committee, Jim Jordan, indicate that the House is gearing up towards launching an impeachment inquiry into President Biden. When asked directly over the weekend if he was planning to launch this impeachment inquiry once the House comes back in just 2 weeks from their recess in September, Speaker McCarthy had this to say.
If you look at all the information we've been able to gather so far, it is a natural step forward that you would have to go to an impeachment inquiry.
He said this in reference to findings from the Oversight, Judiciary, and Budget Committees. For example, IRS whistleblowers coming forward and saying that top DOJ officials stood in the way of their investigation into Hunter Biden's tax evasions regarding foreign income. There's also that recent testimony by Devin Archer, who's Hunter Biden's longtime business partner, who testified that Biden, when serving as vice president, did attend some dinners with Hunter Biden, as well as the foreign business associates that he was was working with. But House Republicans say there are still many unanswered questions, and the administration is stonewalling their investigations, which is one reason why Speaker McCarthy says that an impeachment inquiry may be needed, saying that if they take this approach, Congress will have the tools to find this information that they're looking for. McCarthy has in the past already indicated that he was interested in an impeachment inquiry, which House Republicans say does carry some weight.
I don't think there's any question that him speaking to that has caused a paradigm shift, yes.
The chairman of the House Judiciary Committee, Jim Jordan, also commented that the House is very close to launching this impeachment inquiry, but he also stated that this would take the full support of the Republican conference, since no Democrats would support this effort. And there's also a roadblock, of course, in the Senate, where Democrats hold the majority. The House will return in 2 weeks, so we'll be waiting to see how they handle this, as well as a fast approaching September 30th deadline to fund the government to avoid a shutdown. Reporting from Capitol Hill, Melina Weiskup, NTD News.
Thank you for watching the Capitol Report. If you want to see our full broadcast, check us out at epochtv.com.